Hey guys, so we visited the house, passport finally, we went inside. It was pretty fun. We learned a lot about him. They have some really cool artifacts there, like his signature, stuff from his childhood, things like that. So yeah, it was really cool. Hope you guys enjoy our video.
You get a grand passport.
Yeah.
Over here, and then I'll have you guys go in here, and I'll just kind of stand back and let you guys do it. And if you want to ask me about something, you can do that, okay?
Okay.
So, this house was built by the man who lived next door. His name was Lee Thompson. What year do you think this house was built?
1822.
Nope, that was the year Grant was born.
Oh.
This house was built in 1817. And Lee Thompson, who was the man who lived next door, he built this as a rental house. So he would rent it out to people to make some extra money.
Yeah.
Now, where you were standing and then the room right next to me, those are not a part of the original house. They were not added on until the 1830s. So when he rented this house to Jesse and Hannah Grant, those were Ulysses S. Grant's parents, he rented it to them in 1821. It was just the one room, and this was the back door. Now, take a guess. What do you think the rent might have been? How many dollars a month do you think they paid? Yes.
$2.
Yes, that is correct. They paid $2 a month. So Jesse was a tanner by trade. So a tanner would take the skin of animals, so pig, cow, goat, and he would process them to make them into things. So it could be shoes or bags or breeches, but he would also get them ready to ship out to go to other places. So he was a tanner. And he was going to manage a tannery where he would do all of these things. And the tannery stood up where the Grant Memorial Church is. Now, you said 1822. On April 27th, 1822, Hiram Ulysses Grant, who we know as Ulysses S. Grant, he was born in that room. Now, he was delivered by this gentleman. His name was Dr. Rogers. He was from New Richmond. And this is a reproduction photo, so it is a copy of the original photo. That is Dr. Rogers in front of the Grant home. Now, the family lived here for 11 more months after that. And then the family moved to Georgetown because Jesse was going to own his own tannery. He was going to own his own business. And that's where his boyhood home is, which is in Georgetown, Ohio. Now, another important date is 1885. Does anyone know why?
Wasn't Ulysses S. Grant a Civil War general?
He was, but the Civil War ended in 1865. Yes.
He was elected president.
No, that was not quite. That was in 1868.
He moved back here?
No, he died in 1885.
Oh.
He also published his memoir, so it was his life story through his own words. But guess what they did? They moved this house. They took it off of its foundation. They put it on a boat and on a rail car. Yes.
It took 6 trucks.
Yes. Now, it kind of went on a tour. So it made a stop in Cincinnati, and it ended up in Columbus, Ohio. And it stayed there until 1936. And then they brought the house back, and they turned it into a museum. You were asking about the dirt. So in January of 1937, we had a big flood in this area most people know it as the 37 flood. So that picture right there, that is the Grant home, and that is the water.
And the river's way down there.
Yes. So the river was over there, and then there was also a creek that is over there. It's called Big Indian Creek. But you have to remember, so during that time, the river looked a lot different. They did not have dam systems, so they didn't have those doors that kind of level out the water. So the Ohio River was a lot more skinny, and it of water in this house. So where you're standing right now, you would have been completely underwater.
Oh.
So they did manage to get the artifacts out. They moved them into the attic of the church to keep them safe. And then they pretty much just had to wait until the waters went down and hope that the house would not float away. Thankfully, it did not. Are y'all ready to go into the main house?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Let's go. Watch your step, please.
Daddy, look, pencil sharpeners.
Okay, it's lovely. Let's go.
Come on and step up. Step up, step up.
It's a spindle.
Oh.
Okay, now, in here, these floors are the original floors. Don't touch that, sweetie, because that needle is still really sharp. And you don't want to poke yourself on that rusty needle. That would not be fun. Yeah, I don't think your dad wants to make that run. Now, these floors are the original floors from 1817, so these floors are over 200 years old. So are the bricks in the fireplace. And then there's a root cellar. So a root cellar is a basement. And they would get to that from outside, but it's gated off now, but that was here when the Grants were here. Now, in this house, there is no electricity, no heat, no AC, no running water when the Grants were here, okay? We obviously have AC now. That was not here. So this was where they did all their living. Now, I'm going to really quickly point out what belonged to the Grants, and then I'm going to ask you some questions, okay? That large wooden cupboard right there, that belonged to the Grants. That was given to Jesse and Hannah Grant as a wedding present from Hannah's family, and someone made that by hand. They didn't have any machines to make it. This trunk right here, remember how I said Jesse was a tanner and he would make things? This is one of the things he made. It's a trunk. It has his initials, Jesse Root Grant. And he gave that to his son Ulysses when he was 17 and he left to go to college at West Point. The last thing we have in here that belongs to the Grants is the white nightgown and the brown shawl. Those belong to Grant's mother, Hannah. Now, looking around, where do you think they did their cooking? Where's their kitchen? Yes. Now, do you think they would have used that this time of year with it being really hot outside?
Likely not.
No. So where would they cook?
Outside?
Yes. Most people would have an outdoor kitchen set up. So they would cook outside.
Teapot holder.
Not quite. Now, also looking around, look at this bed. What do you notice is different about it than the beds that you're used to? What about, listen to what's in here.
Beanbag.
No.
Hay.
Hay. So the rope bed, and then this was a sack and it was filled with hay. So have you ever heard the expression, sleep tight, don't let the bed bugs bite?
Yeah.
It comes from this, because those ropes, you would have to use a tool like this to tighten them. Otherwise, they would loosen up.
Oh.
It would be uncomfortable.
Yes. And then you would have to change that hay out every couple months, because otherwise you would get things like carpenter ants. And they would pinch you. They would bite you. So that's why they got that phrase. They also, when you would go to bed, that's where we got the phrase, hit the hay. Because that is hay. Now, what about their bathroom to take a shower?
Outside?
Probably.
Outside when it was warm, yes. What about when it was colder out?
They probably wasn't having one.
Well, they would have still washed themselves.
Boil water?
They would right there. Yep. So remember how I said the well outside? That was where they they would get their water. That was for drinking, and then they would use it for cooking as well as they would use it to take a bath. They would put it in a pitcher like that, and then they would pour it in a bowl, and they would have soap that they made themselves. And that's how they would wash themselves. What about a bathroom?
Outside. Tree.
Outside when it was daytime out. What about when it's nighttime? It's really dark out here.
And a pan.
House?
A pan.
Bucket.
Not in our house, they would have a chamber pot.
Yes, I read about those.
Yes. So the chamber pot, it was like a big bowl.
You dump it out the window.
Well, you wouldn't dump it out the window, so you would put it under the bed at night, and then in the morning when you got up and it was bright outside, you would dump it outside. And you would bring it
Under
back
your
in.
bed?
Just a pea pod.
Alright, now looking around, do you guys have any questions about anything that's in here before I have you go to the next section? Yes.
Is that a real rifle?
Yes, that is a Kentucky long rifle.
Was that rifle used in?
You would make butter in that butter churner right there. Now, when you would make the butter, it was kind of slimy. It was wet.
I make butter.
Yeah. So they would put the butter in here and they would do this. And they would scrape off pieces of the butter and they would set it aside until you had a nice chunk of butter. Alright, you all ready to move on to the